When it comes to EVE Online, every player wants to know the most effective tactic available. You want to know the meta. The meta controls everything. It determines what will and will not happen. Knowing the meta will alter your views, make you question your reality. It might even make you laugh. And now, you're part of it. You're watching the Meta Show.
Hello everybody and welcome to the Meta Show. The date is the 7th of September and I'm back after a few weeks off, busy with work and other things, and the Alliance tournament was the last 2 weeks. But we are here. Hello everybody. Today we are joined by Zintage. Say hello, Zintage.
Hi.
And yeah, we're going to be talking all things Zintage and also some fights that happened because Altai just gave me yet another one. So bear with, but Bay, anything from you today?
Yeah, I'm the Skinner tool frustration continues with the packs that are available on the Eve store, having Skinner tool components instead of skins, which are really nice to have in this game. And yeah, you're gonna hear me rage about that quite a bit, probably.
Okay, with that, let's jump into our top story today. Well, actually, we'll do Nullsec Power Hour first for this one. Because we have several fights that have happened recently. The first one being in Pochven last night. Let's make that a bit bigger because it's goofed. There we go. So from what I understand, I wasn't there, neither was Zintage, but Fraternity went to destroy a Deepwater Hooligans Astra House in Pochven. They did actually destroy the Astra House, from what I am told. However, they took quite a beating. As you can see, they lost over 200 bill, and we lost 32. Zintage, what would you say their biggest mistake from seeing the BR would be there?
Honestly, I'm not sure they really so much made a mistake. I mean, they did in the fact that it's all hacks, but if you're willing to put the money up front, you're always going to kill a structure. Right. So they killed it, and the amount of money Pochven makes Frat because they have basic complete control over CNTZ, they'll make that back in 2 days on taxes. So whatever.
I mean, it's kind of like us, isn't it? Where we will literally just throw whatever it takes at a structure. Sorry, I just saw a 1 billion-esque vagabond, and I'm just intrigued how he's done that. It's not a bill. Okay, he's probably just lost money.
It's going to be multiple. It's probably going to be the pod.
So yeah, you just hang on. I'll increase volume on Zintage. I think it's just Zintage because he's at max volume for me, but we'll sort it out. Yeah, so they essentially threw stuff into the wood chipper.
And that's a loot pinata, right? Because it's Pochven. It doesn't go to asset safety. So I'm sure that was fun afterwards as well.
Yeah, from what I understand, a lot of people jumped in afterwards as well to get loot. Hold on, I'm playing with the Zintage thing. Nope, nothing I can do. He just needs to talk louder. Zintage, talk louder.
Okay, I'll talk louder. God. Better.
Yeah, so they threw, from what I understand, Vagabonds and Dominix's mostly. That's a lot of scimitars, Jesus. Oh, and Munins and CFIs and I'm surprised they didn't throw the kitchen sink at the same time. Yeah, so that one's kind of cut and dry, really. They went after an Astra House, and it cost them a lot, but they killed it. But I believe we held the field as well, so we got all the loot. So really, it's kind of a net positive there, I would say. Now, Altoari actually just handed me another BR that I believe literally just happened. Damn, Zeke where there was I believe it was a gank in Vale. Is this the one you were talking about before we started Zintage?
Yeah,
Holy
that's the one where
cow.
I was talking. The guy was multi-boxing like 16 Titans.
Yeah,
on
that's
his own.
ridiculous.
But from what I understand about this, it was a bait on a wormhole. They tried to bait Frat in, and Frat just escalated enough that they managed to clear the dreads before any real damage. Well, some real damage was done, but like the largest of the real damage could be done.
In answer to the question in chat why we're fighting over deep water structures is because enemy of my enemy. If Fat wants to blow it up, we don't particularly want to make it easy on them. You know? It's all about who's a bigger pain in our ass, and the answer is Fat.
Yeah, I mean, when it comes to Pochvin, it's basically everyone against Frat and Horde. So...
But we've done stuff like that before. There's been times where there's been a person who's a bigger enemy of us than Horde in the past, and we have legitimately teamed up with Horde. It's just, yeah, who's the bigger problem? But yeah, there's even a spicy quest on this BR. But yeah, it looks like a bit of a bait gone wrong, as she said. Although quite a few dreads did get killed before the Titans came in, by the looks of it. Let's have a look at the timeline. Where's the capitals? CFI, CNIs. Bear with me a sec, folks. Got to find where the capitals came in. Oh, look, an Agatha from Test. Okay, yeah, so that's where it kind of starts. Trading quite well. I know what the answer's going to be as I scroll down. Trading quite well until Titans, essentially, will be the answer there. But yeah, if you look at that, like, you've got deep water people shooting at us in that instance. So, it goes both ways. But yeah, that's all I've got for these fights, because neither of us were here, and it's just biggest fights. Woohoo. So we're gonna... sorry, I was reading chat. So we're gonna move on to Betty's stuff with the top story. Take it away, Betty.
So I'm super excited. And Ranger, after we did the interview a couple weeks ago, gave me a list of folks that I could pin down and get into talking to us on the Meta Show, so we could get to know some more of the Alliance leaders. And Zintage is my second victim, so to speak. So I'm really glad that you joined us today. I had the pleasure of being on a fleet with you for the first time a couple weeks ago and had a lot of fun. I don't do overnight fleets very often, but I'm glad I stayed up for that. So, Zintage, tell me a little bit about coming into the game and how you got involved with Goons in the beginning.
Well, so coming into the game, I didn't actually come in through Goons initially. I assume plenty of people in chat, I know some won't, but if they've ever heard of Europa Universalis, big game, and it's a grand strategy game. And basically, one of the big YouTubers that was playing that game at the time decided that he was going to get into Eve. So he brought like I think it was something ridiculous, like 3,000 players into Goon.
Oh, wow.
Or not into Goons, but into Eve at one time. And basically, we were fighting Pyrat in high psych with 500 T1 frigates, alphaing Proteuses off of the Mar Undock.
Wow.
And basically, that group, the YouTuber obviously eventually quit. That's to be expected. They just burn out, etc. But a large group of us managed to stay together, and we formed what was called Rabble Alliance. And we took a trip through LowSec. We ended up in NullSec. And actually, if you look at the history of the 1DQ constellation, Rabble Alliance owned that. So 1DQ was my home for a really long time. And basically, eventually we ended up getting kicked out by Red Alliance. And we moved around for a bit. And eventually we ended up part of Phoenix Coalition, which was FCON's group, which that was a mess. But the big thing was we had a guy in the alliance that was, or used to be, a goon at the time. And after we got tired of FCON, I decided to go with him and go join Goons. And that's actually where I lost my first super. This was back when you could initially just instantly tether on Citadels. And it was actually Arendis, who at the time was the fitting director. He went to light me a Sino, and he lit the Sino in a safe instead of on the Karma Fleet Astrahausen system. And I got dread bombed by Tri.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, Theodore, I'm talking about Arumba.
So talk about your initial responsibilities in Goon Swarm. And I didn't say, but you oversee Cap Swarm and Alliance fittings. So we're gonna dig into that a little bit too. But talk about a little bit in your roles and leadership as you grew with the Alliance.
Yeah, so I've been in FC for a really long time at this point. I want to say 2016-ish. I took a break. My corp ended up going and trying doing their own thing, but I ended up coming back. But I started as an FC. When I came back during the Siege of 1DQ, the big joke was I was the skirmish commander that solely ran hacks. But basically came back, and Kosacek had started up Beehive, and I was being a guard bee at the time. And basically, I didn't really agree how it was being ran. Kosacek ended up burning out, and eventually Asher just went, "Do you think you could do this better?" And I said, yes. And then I became the Beehive director. And within about 2 weeks of being the Beehive director, Kosacek had also been the FC director, and that job got thrown on me. So I was doing Beehive and being the FC director.
And that is not a fun job.
No, it's not. It's very thankless.
Been there, done that.
So eventually, as time went on, Toaster stepped up, and Toaster ended up taking over as Beehive director. And Toaster found his own person who ended up taking over Beehive from him, and Toaster took over as the FC director. And then I got moved into fittings and Cap Swarm.
So talk a little bit about your role in Cap Swarm, your responsibilities, what you're in charge of doing to make sure that runs smoothly for the Alliance.
So Cap Swarm mostly runs itself, really. The big thing that I do for Cap Swarm is I move our fuel caches. I set up where we need to have fuel and stuff like that. Cap Swarm's really the easy part. It's just, here's your title. My big thing is fittings. I do most of our doctrines at this point. I have the fitting team to help me and so on. But Cap Swarm's really just, we need someone to move the fuel. You're useful. Here you go.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay. Well, I really want to dig into fittings because I am definitely one of those people that ask for the fitting when I get into a fleet or we're going to a gate camp or something like that. It is not my forte at all whatsoever, but I know it's a crucial element of our fleet operations. How much of a influence do you have on our fleet doctrines, and how do you go about deciding what our ships look like?
Yeah, so how much influence I have now is basically all of it. Since I took over, we have basically swapped our doctrines entirely. We got rid of the sacrileges, we got rid of the TFIs, and so on. And we've really swapped over to being more shield focused, just because that's what's in the meta right now. And it's a matter of, I'm trying to give us our best ships possible for what we are doing. And they're not always what everyone wants to fly, but they're what's the most cost effective to what they can do generally.
So I'm glad you mentioned the meta. So how do you stay ahead of changes in the game? And what's the process for adapting our fittings for those changes?
Yeah, so it's not really that you can stay ahead so much as you're following what CCP's doing. So right now, there's a very big Ferox Navy issue meta, just because Ferox Navy issues are buffed to the max, and CCP has no clue what they're doing when it comes to balance, it seems like. You have a 700 DPS cruiser that has 180k EHP, or sorry, battle cruiser. So they do almost as much damage as Rokes. They're 200 mil each, and you can just replace them over and over and over. So you're really heavy on the Navy battlecruiser meta right now. Battleships are also extremely strong. But the funny thing is we're not actually, like, a lot of people like to say we're in a battleship meta, and that's just not really the actual case right now. What we're in is we're in a dreadnought meta, where dreadnoughts can apply so well to subcaps that there's no point to carriers almost. Like, you can Skynet with carriers, but if you're in an actual fight, like, if we brought battleships against battleships, I mean, both sides have seen this. We did it to Horde in this deployment. Horde did it to us for months before this. If one side has dreadnoughts, they can apply to those battleships, and it's just completely lopsided how strong the dreadnoughts are.
And to clarify, that's with cap guns as well, not with high angle guns.
Yeah.
That's long range cap guns.
Yeah. High angle weapons are basically useless right now, because if you can make the long range and the short range guns apply, there's no point to be using Haws.
Pretty much alpha battleships.
So just to kind of round out the conversation, tell me what it is you love the most about what you do day in and day out. What drives you in this role?
I'm not sure it's so much that it drives me. It's that I'm given a problem and I'm told to fix the problem. So then I spend the next 6 hours Pyfa warring the problem to fix it. And it's kind of just like it's a puzzle, and you got to solve the puzzle.
How do you relay those changes to the skirmish commanders and the FCs? What's that like?
Generally speaking, the skirmish commanders just get the doctrine when it's released to the line. Skirmish commanders don't generally get to know about it beforehand. FCs will sometimes get input put in initially. We actually have several FCs on the fitting team, so we don't always send it to the full FC team, but occasionally we will.
If it's massive changes, everybody kind of pitches in and gives their, because everybody's stuck with them essentially once the change happens. So, yeah.
Yeah, I know there's a ton of organization that you do through communicating to us and making sure that fits are updated and stay current and we can find them. And I can tell you that I really appreciate that. So is there anything else about what you do that you really want to share with us? Or maybe, actually, I'd rather ask this. Since you've been in the game for so long and you've been with Goons so long and in Delve so long, can you talk a little bit about the cultural shift in Goonswarm over the years and how it's impacted your journey and you staying with the Alliance?
Yeah, okay, so first off, Goons has really changed a lot. Like it has been a very long time, and we have gone through multiple cultural revolutions, kind of thing. And not everyone will say the new Goons is good. There are definitely people that will be like, this is not the Goon Swarm that I was in 10 years ago. But you got to change with the times. And I think we've done relatively well. There is still some like old guard that not everyone will agree with. But we've brought in a lot of new blood and we've been just changing. It's really hard to say. Like, I think we've changed for the better. I think most people will agree that we've changed for the better. Goonswarm used to be really toxic back in 2016. Like, it was ridiculously toxic. But I think we've become nicer people, and I mean, more of the people around us like us. So
even the one of the big changes I'd say as well is in the FC team, because when both of us were skirmish commanders, it was a very different and unwelcoming place, I would say, for new people, unless you were in with the crowd. There was a lot of toxicity, but now it's a very more of a nurturing place. A lot more emphasis is put on teaching rather than look at me sort of thing.
Yeah, I'd say it's a lot more teaching. Like back in, I forget what year it was. It was probably 2017, 2018. I basically, the predicament that had happened was we were trying to go help Test with a timer. And Test had given Jump Bridge access to GSF, but not to our allies. And I had thought I was being smart going through this Ansplex to get away from a hostile fleet. Or maybe it was a Jump Bridge at the time. It's been a long time. I forget where it actually changed. Yeah, it might have been a Jump Bridge. Anyway, we went through this to get away from 4 hostile fleets that tried to gank us before a fight on our way in or out. They had bridged over Test to try and hit us. And basically we lost like all the lawn and TNT people because I went through this jump bridge instead of bouncing safes because I thought everyone could go through it, but it was only goons. And at that point, I forget who was actually the FC director at the time, or maybe it was the core director. I think it might have been John that tried to take away my keys. They went and tried to take away my Munin keys, which was really funny because it had happened to an Eagle fleet. But you get the idea. We're a lot less toxic now. We will allow people to make mistakes and let them try and learn from it and explain to them why things are done certain ways.
Also, I'd say that's more of a Diplo mistake than your mistake. They should have secured jump bridge access for the entirety of the Imperium, but there we go. Yeah, it's definitely a much nicer place because back when I was starting out, you were always worried that somebody was going to bite your head off if you made a simple mistake. But nowadays, people don't generally get their head bitten off.
Now I just worry about you biting my head off.
I don't bite anyone's head off anymore.
Can you share your favorite Eve story with us, Zintage? Either a fight or just something that happened in this game that is either funny or you just remember really well.
Well, this one isn't really a goon story, but it was really funny. This was actually a Rabble Alliance story. So we were fighting. It was Iron Armada at the time. We had originally been allies with Iron Armada, and we had pushed these Russians out of Molten Heath to take their moons. And then Iron Armada ended up splitting from us and betrayed us and started taking all our moons because we had split the moons like 50-50, and they decided to take the rest of the moons. Well, what ended up happening was this was the age of Eve Skunk, which was a website that like people would put their spy ESIs in, and then you'd get everyone's Eve mails to their alliance. And what we had ended up doing was we knew that we were on Eve Skunk, that someone had put us on Eve Skunk. So we made this fake alliance mail about how our brand new Rabble Titan was in this POS. And it was an Iron Armada POS. And what we had done was we said our Titan was in it. People didn't really pay attention too much about it. And Wrecking Crew at the time showed up and killed the Iron Armada R64 POS because they thought our Titan was in it.
Oh my gosh. This is the stuff that I love the most about Eve lore and the history of players that have been in the game for a long time.
We do have a question in chat from a bit ago about doctrines, whether builders and producers of ships get told in advance. And it was kind of answered in chat. GSF has a procurement team that generally handled the initial seeding, so we can keep it OPSEC, and also a lot of the FCs produce ships as well. So the initial seeding is generally done by the people in the know. People they've leaked it to.
I can kind of speak on that a little bit. So we don't try and have procurement seed all the ships because we want it to still be an open market, but we want to make sure that there's enough that when we first introduce a doctrine that people can get it. So generally for like battleships, we generally have them stock something like 700 plus of them. And I think for the Ferox Navy issues, they had almost 1,000. And that's just kind of like the numbers that it takes for a group our size to get into the doctrine once. And then it's a matter of once they're in the doctrine, we generally still have procurement get some. So when we have big whelps or big fights that we can switch that. But after that first initial seeding, it's generally just the open market doing its thing.
Yeah, it's generally X amount of fleets worth of ships, from my understanding. When there's a new doctrine, and then the rest is free for all once it's announced. And any of the good producers just have the materials on hand to build any ship, so they can get them done real quick.
Yeah, that's actually something that's been complained to me recently, and it's kind of on CCP, but what you'll notice is there's a lot less T2 ships being used in the game now. It's a lot more pirate faction and so on, just because CCP has really nerfed the T2 ships into the ground comparatively. Just the Navy battlecruisers are honestly too strong. And I'm just going to keep saying that. The Navy battlecruisers are way too strong, just like dreadnoughts are way too strong. A funny thing I was looking at is you could reduce the tracking of long-range dread guns by 75%. They would still perfectly track capitals, and they could still do about 1,000 DPS to battleships. So long-range dread guns are just way too good right now. Extremely too good.
But for T2 producers, look at the Logi, look at the boosting ships, Hugans, the Chesuses. all that stuff still gets used and probably will never not get used. So there's your way to go if you're a T2 producer. Do the support ships, because they're also going to get shot a lot. Just look at what
Did
we're
you have a
losing
question? Oh, sorry. You have a question in chat about which ship you prefer to fly, even if it's bad.
Yeah, I mean, I saw that. I'm gonna be honest, it's actually a really good ship, so I like it anyway. I like flying the Bargast. I'm a big pancake enjoyer.
Some might say an enthusiast.
I'm really upset that CCP made it so you basically can't run a Bargast fleet anymore, but it was a little too good, so I get it.
So I've got a question about fittings that everybody's going to be wondering. You're going to hate me for this question. So when are we getting Alpha Fleet back? You know, a bit of
as soon as
Maelstroms.
the Maelstrom gets a range bonus and a mid slot.
Well, you heard it here first, guys. Get nagging CCP.
Yes, beyond. We have Bargast at home. It's called the Raven Navy issue.
Mm-hmm. I wish Istars were more usable. Love me an Ishtar.
It's definitely been interesting to see, because I've only been playing for 3 years. It's been interesting to see how the doctrines and the ships have changed over the last 3 years alone. I remember training so hard to get into that Eagle at first so I could get on Eagle fleets, and now we don't see them at all anymore. But yeah, so what drives a lot of that? I'm really curious. Why? It just changes the game, or?
Yeah, it's generally changes that CCP has made. I will say in the past 3 years, the doctrine iteration has been much, much, much more rapid than basically any other time in the game. It used to be that you had your Alpha fleet, you had your Baltecs, etc. Everyone ran Macarials for a while, so you kind of just had your fleets.
Munins online.
Yeah, and then the hack meta came around, and we had Eagles and we had Munins, and you kind of just had what you had at the time. But recently, with the changes that CCP made to the battleship HPs, we got into a bit of a battleship meta for a bit, and then people realized, hey, now it's dreads. Now let's use Navy battle cruisers because CCP's made this change. CCP's made this change, etc. CCP has made a lot more changes to subcaps that have switched what people are using recently compared to what they did in the past. And also what people or how people are fitting their ships has changed to what we do in the past. Back then, it was a lot more, okay, we're going to have high resist ships that are doing this and this and this. And it's a lot less high resist now and more about disposability. It's a really cost efficiency now. Like I said, with the Navy battlecruisers, it's like 200 mil. They're really good at trading effectively. Back in the day, people were running 800 mil Macarials that were running X-type hardeners, and they were using triage. Now, you don't really see that outside of low-sec. And the big reason is reps just aren't nearly as effective as they used to be. We've gotten into this thing where rate of fire has become so important that armor is basically useless if you're not dropping triage. So medium guns like the rail guns, your lasers, and now large rail guns, which is the big buff that came to the Roke recently that brought the Rokes into the game again, is they've had their cycle time increased to the point that you will always get 2 shots into an armor ship before reps land. Whereas shield, the reps happen at the beginning of the cycle. So shield is just straight up almost better in all cases than armor now. There are times where E-War can matter, like in the small scale, but when you start talking like the 1,000 people fights, it's basically always shield. You have more damage, shields naturally longer ranged on most of the hulls, and your reps land at the beginning of the cycle. So it's just like a triple whammy on it. And the really funny thing is like, if you look at the Roke shoots out to 200 kilometers, has something like 230k EHP, and it has good DPS and tracking. Now go look at the Megathron. If you look at a Navy Megathron, which is what Init is using, they're using their Void Hawks. The only thing it has going for it is tracking against armor hacks, so against the Zealot and the Deimos. That's all it has going for it. You get to use your mid slots that are supposed to be your bonus, like for running armor, you get these utility mid slots, but you have to spend that on a SIBO and a tracking computer, and you spend it on a SIBO and a tracking computer, and you still don't get to shoot as far as the Roke does naturally. The Navy Megathron only shoots out to 180 kilometers, whereas the Roke shoots out to 200 plus. So you're doing less damage, you're shooting not as far, and the only thing you have going for you is tracking. And while you do technically have more EHP, your reps land later, and you're not resist bonused like the Roke is. So it's really rough to say that you want to use armor at all right now in the meta. And you're really seeing that. You see Raven Navy fleets, you see Barghest fleets, you see Nightmare fleets, you see Roke fleets. You know what you're not really seeing much of? You're not seeing your TFIs and your Baelgorn fleets and so on anymore. You're just not seeing that.
Or when you do see TFIs, you don't see them for very long.
Yeah.
They're normally dead. But one of the...
So, go ahead.
One of the other things that's changed is, I remember when it was a hack meta, one of the important things was get rid of the Logi. Now, half the time, we don't even bother with the Logi. Like, unless it's causing us an actual problem. Just get rid of the DPS. Whereas with Munins and Eagles and all that, you had to get rid of the Logi, else it was just going to be a pain in your ass. But nowadays, just smash them.
I think there is still something to be said for getting rid of Logi. But we've gotten into such a high DPS meta that if you can get rid of DPS, you should get rid of DPS. And the other thing is, if you can get rid of links, get rid of links. I think a good example is a fight we had the other day. I ended up killing something like 25 Damnations and some Eoses for their armor hack fleet. And basically, once your armor hacks don't have links anymore, they're basically useless. They don't have good range. Like, they only have a targeting range out to like 70 kilometers. Your E-War doesn't do anything anymore when it's unlinked. And now you have basically no EHP and you're slow. So there's something to be said that you can kind of just bully hacks now. They're too short ranged for what they're supposed to do. They were oppressive for a really long time, but the reason they were oppressive is because range is the biggest power in EVE. If you can have range and project your damage out to that range, that's the best thing for you to do. It's just straight up the best.
I mean, look at Munins and Serbs back in the day. They could pile on battleship fleets just because they could shoot from so far away that the battleships couldn't track them, and they were going so quick. And the SIG reduction was a bonus as well. But nowadays, you have to be so close that battleship's going to hit you, no matter what.
Yeah, I think a big thing about that is the Loki. The Loki back in like 2015, 2016, etc. The Loki was so much more powerful. The Loki was basically a Hugin, but it was armor, and it actually had tank. Now you look today, Lokis don't have tank when they're armor fit, and their webs aren't as long as Hugin's. So basically, that took out a ton of utility from armor fleets. And basically, a lot of people now, like, your main web ship in an armor fleet is the Baelgorn, because it's bonus and it can actually tank something. It's just, you don't have the real ability to make yourself apply like you used to with armor. So now you're left with this meta where it's just, I have to throw raw DPS at the problem to fix it. If you just throw raw damage at the problem, stuff will still die. So
that's why I love missiles. Literally throws damage at the problem. Stuff dies the second it hits, depending on the amount of missiles you got. Yeah. Betty, anything else?
Well, I think I've exhausted my questions. I don't know if you have any with your military background that you could poke at him with, but
no, not really. I already know a lot of the yeah ways it works. So no questions are springing to mind. But hey, I mean, if there's no more questions, I think we are. Zintage, do you have any questions for that matter, or does the chat have any questions for Zintage?
Aside from Seema's,
does chat have any questions? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, this is your chance, guys. That you got an alliance director on with you, so that's why we're doing this. And
Also,
Zintage, thank you so much for coming on and chatting with us. I appreciate it so much.
On the T3C question, there are several groups that do run T3Cs. Check them out.
You got a best Titan question?
The best Titan right now is the Levy, hands down. I still think it's the Levy. As for admitting Amar ships look the best,
No,
not really.
No. Caldari or Minmatar?
It's always a fun debate. Which ships look the best?
Caldari or Minmatar?
I mean, if you just want the best looking ship in the game, it's obviously the Macarial. But
oh yeah,
besides that. But also, Trig ships are better than Amar ships, just saying, when it comes to looks.
On the note of a female FC, FCs are not chosen on any statistics other than their ability. So we can't just pluck one up. People need to step up. We have had them in the past. There was an ASCII member who used to be a fleet commander way back when, like 2017, who can't remember her name now, but I'm sure Major Sniper, if he's watching, is about to PM me because he's got like encyclopedic knowledge.
Khaleesi, that's a good goal to have. You should reach for that. I've definitely done my share of at least training fleets, but I've never gone into alliance level FC myself.
Yeah, there's no barriers like that. Like if anybody's a knob because of someone's characteristics or gender or whatever, then they will get dealt with.
On the question of is CCP aware of the state of armor ships and armor fleets, I'd like to think they are. I have talked off Angry Mustache's ear about it. He made the mistake of asking me what I thought should be done about dreads. And I was about to go to bed, and then I didn't go to bed until 5 a.m. because I spent the next 5 hours just giving him my manifesto on what's wrong with dreads and what's wrong with subcap meta currently in the game. So I'd like to think some of it got to them. I assume it did. But, I mean, we'll see what CCP wants to do. They've already said that they want to change dreads, so we'll see if that's a good thing or if it's CCP's monkey pawing us. So it really depends.
See, I have one issue with that though. You said you were going to bed. You don't sleep.
Believe it or not, I do sleep sometimes.
Really? Wow.
It just, you never know when I'm going to be asleep.
I have Discord
when I'm going to
messages
be
that
awake.
say otherwise. Is anyone around? Me. 2 hours later. Anyone still around? Me. 5 hours later. Me.
Yeah, I don't think any of our alliance directors sleep, quite honestly.
I know Apple does. Anywho, any more questions, guys? If not, we could probably wrap it up here. Nobody. I don't think Zintage knows what time zone he's from.
I'm technically from East Coast US, but I'm whatever time zone I need to be at the time.
Altuari will get his own show on INN when Altuari comes up with an idea for a show on INN. Anyway, I think that's all, unless there's any more questions. Thank you for coming, Zintage. It's been a blast. I will probably nag your ear off about something in the next 24 hours anyway. So I'll talk to you soon.
Oh dear, here we go.
Well, the last thing was, am I nuts with this? Like, is this crazy? Yeah. So thanks for coming, everybody. I will be doing a after show on my channel in a bit. I bet you might be joining me. Are you joining me, Betty?
I will after I get mini rage.
Okay. So thanks for watching. Thank you for coming, Zintage, and we will see you all next time. Bye bye.
Bye guys. Have a great week.